Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Gender and Development Studies, SOGDS, Certificate Program. Certificate Program in Gender and Science, CGSCI. BGS-002 Gender, Science, Technology and Society. Block-1 Introduction to Gender and Science. Unit-1 Gender and Society. 1.0 Introduction. In the mid-1970s, the historical invisibility of women in productive work began to be documented by researchers and highlighted by the modern women's movement in India. It was clear that socio-cultural ideas about the capacities and abilities of women and men, and institutional structures, rather than their physique and biology, were determining women's roles in the domestic and public spheres. 2 decades later, in the mid-1990s, this understanding was deepened by the feminist concept of gender and the significance of gender identities and gender relations in shaping people's lives. It has now become evident that multiple inequities, such as of gender, class, caste, ethnicity, religion and language, are interwoven and embedded in the organization of society and in the institutions and processes of knowledge creation, including science. This impacts the bodies, lives and work of all persons. This introductory unit is intended to familiarize you with basic terms and concepts. Some of these will be developed in greater detail in later units. Terms of discourse. Every discipline uses specialized terms of discourse to improve communication. Such terms may be derived from normal usage, acquire a specialized meaning, and sometimes seep back into everyday language. Where the specialized usage has evolved recently, as with the word gender, the difference between the everyday word and the term can be confusing. Even a word like society can be understood in different ways. Throughout this unit, relevant terms will be explained and discussed. 1.1 Learning Outcomes. After studying this unit, you will be able to explain how typical ideas of femininity and masculinity shape gender identities. Examine how systemic male domination is varied in different patriarchies. Analyze the division of labor in caste societies, which is unequal and gendered, and examine why gender power relations persist across class and caste. 1.2 Femininity, masculinity and gender identities. The people who live in a particular geographic area, with a common history and features like languages, customs, belief systems and institutions, constitute a society. Historically, societies have developed ideas and norms about the traits, behaviors, roles, responsibilities and positions of individuals. These ideas typify what it means to be a woman, a man, or a person of the third gender, TG, that is, a person with an intersex identity, born with reproductive or sexual anatomy that does not fit definitions of female or male, or a transgender person, not identifying with the sex to which they were assigned at birth. These social norms are encompassed in concepts of femininity and masculinity, which shape the way in which individuals perceive themselves and live their lives. Women and men experience these ideas differently. As Gita 1 points out, these ideas affect our food, our clothes, even our sexual relations and thoughts, shaping how we perceive ourselves and others. For instance, boys are taught to be bold and daring, while girls are taught to be modest and retiring. Boys are not supposed to cry, and girls are not supposed to climb trees. Anyone who seems like a misfit is ridiculed. Ideas of femininity and masculinity vary across society, class, community, and caste. Traits and behaviors that are considered feminine or masculine are specific to particular contexts. Having a muscular body is widely considered to be manly, but this is not so in parts of Southeast Asia, where many men have delicate bodies. So too, in all societies, some men are caring and gentle, not considered typically male, just as some women are assertive and bold, not considered typically female. Traits such as gentleness and toughness are human characteristics of both women and men. People do not accept these ideas passively into their everyday practice, but struggle with them, reworking some, subverting or discarding others. Such negotiation involves both cooperation and conflict. For instance, it has been noted that high caste women accept their subordinated position in the family as a kind of bargain with men because it enables the women to maintain their superior caste status in society. Typical ideas also change over time. Today, many girls wear jeans and boys wear brightly colored shirts that would not have been acceptable in their grandparents' times. Femininity and masculinity are not the natural result of sexual differences or even of socioeconomic relations but arise from systemic norms enforced by society. As the French writer Simone de Beauvoir too famously said, one is not born but rather becomes a woman. This insight laid the ground for the feminist understanding of gender as being socially constructed. Feminism is the modern sociopolitical movement for the rights of women, for women's voice and their resistance to invisibility and silencing. It encompasses many different threads. But broadly, feminists view gender as the way in which people think about themselves and organize their societies, their belief systems and institutions. Gender is, thus, fluid and dynamic and a critical, analytical category to understand society. Point 3. It is also useful to be clear about what gender is not. As Sumi Krishna 4 has written, a gender is not a binary grammatical category to differentiate between the forms of words in a language, like Striling, Pulling in Hindi. B. Gender does not mean women, although the term gender has been widely and wrongly re-assimilated into common usage as an alternative word for women. C. Gender is not the same as biological sex, i.e. female, male anatomical, physiological and reproductive features and functions. The gender-sex interaction will be discussed in Unit 2. D. Gender is not fixed but is a process by which a person acquires certain traits, needs and interests and assumes particular roles and responsibilities. The English language term, gender, does not have a single word translation in many languages. So, it is necessary to develop new meanings for existing words. Some Chinese feminists combine two words, social plus sex, to denote gender. Women's groups in Karnataka have used the Kannada word lingatva, derived from the word for sexuality in Sanskrit, to express the concept of gender. Gender shapes every person's identity, traits and behavior, their roles, positions and responsibilities in society, and the meaning they find in their lives. One's gender identification depends on one's perception of oneself as a woman or a man, or as being in between or neither. Gender is not something we are born with but is shaped from birth throughout our lives by how we are brought up, by our relationships with family and relatives, and by interactions with the caste and community. 1.3 Systemic male domination and patriarchies. Indian society and the social groups that constitute it are characterized by many diversities, and also by disparities of materials, social resources and knowledge. Both diversity, such as ethnic, social and gender differences, and disparity, such as economic levels, are related to the ways in which a particular society is organized. Social structures such as family and community occur across society. Other structures such as economic class, social status or position create a hierarchy in society. Families too may be internally organized as a hierarchy with the father or other adult male usually having the most authority. Systemic male domination varies across communities, religious and ethnic, tribal groups. Among plains-dwelling peasant and caste societies, the control of productive resources, labor and knowledge is organized in a decidedly hierarchical manner. Ritual status among caste groups is based on concepts of purity and impurity, ranging from high-status Brahmins to low-status Dalits, ritually excluded as untouchables. This is very different from the many hill-dwelling and tribal groups where the sharing of productive resources and the division of labor within the family, kin group or village is relatively more egalitarian. Until a few decades ago, women had a greater role in taking decisions and managing resources among certain Adivasi, tribal groups in central and northeastern India who foraged for food and practiced shifting, slash and burn, cultivation. When Adivasi tribal groups adopt settled agriculture, the process of social stratification and women's subordination begins. Male-dominated societies are marked by taboos against women using the plow, denying them rights to own land, the phenomenon of witch hunting, and exclusion from social rituals and the political system. Commenting on the social transition from tribe to caste among tribal groups in Jharkhand in central India, Govind Kelkar and Dev Nathan 5 have noted the absence of any seclusion of women in the tribal situation, the free mixing of adolescents of both sexes, the choice of women and men as regards to their marriage partners, the ease of divorce, the practice of widow remarriage, all come under severe attack in the period of formation of caste society. Similar transitions have taken place among the tribal societies of northeastern India, where the transition from foraging to settled agriculture, communal to individual land ownership, and tribal belief systems to Hinduism or Christianity has affected the women's roles and status. Although women have relatively more personal and economic autonomy, retaining some control over the income from foraged forest produce, they are subordinate to men in the religious and political spheres. 6. There are different views about the emergence of patriarchy, which is the systemic privileging of male values and beliefs, and male domination of the family, household, and other institutions. Patriarchal societies are generally, though not always, patrilineal, that is, descent, inheritance and succession are traced through the male line. Such societies are often also patrilocal, as in much of northern India, where a married woman moves to the home of the husband or to his paternal home, and where authority vests with the patrilineal kin. Patriarchy is manifested in ways that are specific to a social group, tribe or caste, although some patriarchal elements may be common across social groups. So, it is more accurate to talk of patriarchies, in the plural. Uma Chakravarti 7 says, as we explore different regions and different time periods, we can see that an evolved caste-based patriarchy is very different from tribal patriarchies. The most widespread form of present-day, caste-linked male dominance in India is Brahmanical patriarchy, which has also influenced various tribal patriarchies. Patriarchy is sometimes wrongly seen as a mirror image of matriarchy. Societies where female values and interests are supposedly valued and where institutions are dominated by women. There is, however, no evidence of functioning matriarchies in the past or in the present. There are a few communities that are matrilineal, tracing descent through the female line. The matrilineal communities in India include the tribal Khasis and Garos of Meghalaya, the Hindu Neils of Kerala, the Bunts of Karnataka, and the Muslims of Lakshadweep. Matrilineal communities may also be male dominated because authority is exercised by a woman's male kin, such as her brothers and maternal uncles. 1.4 Unequal and gendered division of labor. Gender is deeply intertwined with the unequal division of labor in caste societies. The patriarchal caste-linked system in India is a complex part of the social structure. The jati, also spelled jat, is a group into which a person is born. The British used the term caste for the thousands of jatis, or jats, in the Indian subcontinent. The jati is specific to a region and should not be confused with the varna, which is a hierarchical ordering of society into 4 levels by Brahmanical notions of purity and by occupation. The Varna system excludes Dalits, Bahujans, who are now categorized as scheduled castes, and the Adivasis, tribals, now scheduled tribes. Social anthropologist Leela Dubate has explained caste as operating on 3 levels which can be separately analyzed but are interlinked: Jati exclusion, hierarchy, and interdependence. A. The Jati is typically a group with a particular status into which an individual is born, and with rules that govern contact and exclusion or separation, such as for marriage. B. Hierarchy is the principle of order and rank based on status, and C. Interdependence is the division of labor among hierarchically different jatis. Dube points out that women's work contributes to the occupational continuity of a caste group. Women are also expected to maintain customs related to food and ritual practices and follow rigid prescriptions in the critical area of sexuality and marriage. The rules governing an individual's behavior, actions, and interactions with other jatis are centered on the immediate relatives, i.e., the kinship unit of their family and household. Because the maintenance of jati falls upon women, their bodies are rigidly controlled. If an individual violates caste rules, the punishment usually applies to the family and household unless they disown the individual. A jati or caste group is itself like a network of families and larger kinship units. The distribution of material resources among different jatis and within a jati is experienced by these family units. The unequal distribution and control of resources has led to exploitation both within the family and larger kinship units and between different jatis. Over the last century, the interdependence among different jatis has become much weaker because of urbanization and the emergence of many new occupations. Yet, the division of labor and the control of women's bodies still persists to a considerable extent both within the family and in society. Across most of India, the degrading and low-paid occupation of sweepers and scavengers is still filled by Dalits, Bahujans who have been historically responsible for these tasks. Such labor is both degrading and low-paid, particularly so for women of these castes. In the 19th century, the social reformers Jyotibai Phule, 1826–1890, in Maharashtra and E.V. Ramaswamy Periya, 1879–1973, in Tamil Nadu, linked the subordination of the low-status castes in the community and the subordination of women in the family. Periya also questioned conventional notions of femininity and masculinity. He argued that men's control over women's sexuality was related to their control of women's labor and that a woman who accepted the norms of an ideal wife was also accepting her servitude in the marriage. Bhimrao Ambedkar, 1891–1956, had a key role in framing the Constitution of India that bans discrimination against so-called untouchables. Ambedkar argued that the inferior status of women within caste groups was because of the violent control over women's sexuality and the prohibition of intermarriage among castes. 9. The ways in which labor is allocated among different groups in a community and among the members in a family sustain a diverse and unequal social and economic order. Historically, people who are categorized as third gender, now legally recognized in India, include diverse groups who have rejected typical male-female gender identities. The Hijras known as Kinnars in North India, the Aravani in Tamil Nadu and the Jogappas of Karnataka and Andhra have all had culturally assigned but economically precarious roles, and been stigmatized for being different. Gendered patterns of work are context-specific and change over time. Studies across the country have shown task differentiation among women and men. But which specific task, collecting water, fuel wood, selecting seeds, winnowing etc., is done by women and which by men varies in different Locations. Among most farming groups, women are known as skilled seed selectors and conservers, but among some communities women's touch is believed to pollute food crop seeds. Social practices rather than sex seen to determine the distribution of tasks. 10. The most time-consuming and laborious tasks within a family are generally assigned to women and girls, and these tasks are devalued. The unequal division of labor by which women and girls are responsible for domestic work and childcare is so widely enforced that it seems natural. But there is nothing natural or biological that ties women to household provisioning, cooking, cleaning and caring tasks. Indeed, when value is added to such tasks through machines and remuneration, men are quick to take over. In this case, the domestic social norms about femininity and masculinity are overturned in the public sphere, as with men serving as professional cooks. 1.5 Gender power relations. The social construction of gender is a complex and dynamic process which in turn shapes the gender relations between women, men, and third gender persons in the family, community and society. The gender relations between any two persons is a part of the hierarchical way in which the family and community control the organization of society. Class and caste hierarchies are maintained by controlling women's sexuality and labor, and their access to ritual and modern knowledge. All hierarchical control is political, in that it is an exercise of power. For women and those with marginalized gender identities, their personal experience is connected to the structures of power in society, as in the feminist slogan, the personal is political. The gender power relations within a particular social group reflect their belief systems, forms of social hierarchy and degrees of male domination. A person's position and power in society is the result of many factors or variables: their class, caste, community, ethnicity, race, gender, sexual orientation, even age. Each of these variables cuts across and intersects with the others, creating a complex web of power, of domination and subordination, extending from the domestic sphere of intimate relations within the family to the public spheres of employment in society. Gender identities are often paramount regardless of class and caste. This is particularly so when women, and those whose gender identity is not male, face sexual and gender violence, assault or harassment. Because the issue of violence is so pervasive, it brought women across society together, forming the crux of the women's movement in India in the 1980s. In more recent decades, there has been greater awareness that women are not a homogeneous group and that gender relations are different for women in different locations. In the 1990s, Dalit feminists 11 began to point out that the Dalit woman's experience of violence and discriminatory practices was very different from that of the upper caste woman. Dalit and tribal women not only face violence from the men of their community, but also from upper caste men. For upper caste men, sexual assault and violence against poor and marginalized women is an assertion of their caste power over the woman and her community. Indeed, poor Dalit women are among the most sexually vulnerable groups. As caste operates even among non-caste linked religions, poor Muslim Dalit women may experience multiple marginalization because of their gender, caste, religion and poverty. The marginalized Muslim women are also the most socio-economically disadvantaged with the lowest levels of education and access to health care. Class and/or caste sometimes reinforce and sometimes negate gender. Prejudices about caste and gender may affect, say, a woman Dalit engineer whose authority is not recognized by her privileged caste juniors, men and women. Yet, a rich or middle-class woman of a privileged caste who employs a poor Dalit man to work in her house has authority and power over him. Despite the social norms of masculinity in a patriarchal society, age is also a factor. In parts of Africa, a woman over 50 is acknowledged as an honorary man and treated as such. In India too, older women have certain freedoms that younger women do not. The intermeshing of gender with class, caste, ethnicity etc. makes it difficult to generalize about women's position. But some trends can be distinguished. Over time, with increasing rural-urban migration and the anonymity of the city, certain caste rules have weakened, notably regarding food and the observance of rituals. National laws have also opened up spaces for women, such as the right to inherit property and to make an independent choice of the marriage partner through a civil marriage. But although enabling laws exist, social transformation is taking place very slowly. Today, the family continues to be the site where hierarchy is reinforced. The joint family, with more than one generation living in the same residence, persists because of economic and cultural reasons, more so in North India, where married women move to the husband's home, than in South India. Gendered power in a patriarchal intergenerational household reinforces female subordination, taking away women's autonomy and power to make decisions, control over her sexuality, health, mobility, and material and knowledge resources. Gender power relations are diverse and changing in complex ways that are not necessarily empowering for women. The Dalit, Bahujan women's relative freedom to move about and work outside the household is lost when these castes improve their social position. The withdrawal of women from work is seen as a sign of status, conforming to privileged caste, middle-class gender norms. Economic pressures have compelled many lower middle-class families to send women out to work, overcoming conventional gendered barriers regarding night work and living away from home. The young women, who are employed in data processing, call centers, or move to other states to work in garment export factories, contribute hugely to the economic well-being of their families. But this really empowers the women to overcome their gendered environments. Their employment does not translate into greater freedom to take decisions about their life, which is still controlled by patriarchal authorities both at home and at work. 1.6 Let us sum up. Since the 1990s, the feminist term gender has been appropriated swiftly and very widely. But gender is used as a synonym for women without any concern for the patriarchal gender power relations in society. When different gender roles are recognized, the tendency is simply to list what women do and what men do, without any attempt to understand why there are gendered patterns of work. Women are treated as a homogeneous group without addressing the diversity of their caste class locations. Third gender persons are barely recognized. The underlying assumption is that the gender norms of middle-class Brahmanical patriarchy apply, or should apply, across society. The result is that even so-called gender-sensitive initiatives reinforce patriarchal norms in society, seeing all women as mothers and wives first and not as independent productive persons. Patriarchal ideas and the norms of femininity and masculinity seem natural because they are so deeply enmeshed in society and often internalized by women themselves. When dual norms are applied to groups of people who have very different levels of power, the hierarchical relation between them is maintained. Thus, gender and caste discrimination and inequality persist. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we will see you with the next chapter.